Why can't they wear a gold earring? I mean, why did God make gold to begin with?
It's an imbalance in the way in which we think of God and spiritual things, because we've emphasized one aspect of spirituality to the detriment of the other. God is a God of beauty. He created all things beautiful, and so to deny beauty would be, in a way, to deny God.
Right.
Because there is no ugliness as far as what God created, especially originally. Mm-hmm. Ugliness comes from sin. So spirituality, in fact, beauty is a part of spirituality. And I think that's part of what it's alluding to when it says that we should approach God in the beauty of holiness. Beauty and spirituality is an interwoven concept in Scripture.
I think it also goes the other way as well. Like, I know I've seen for myself, the women get frumpy and, they wear these long frocks and stuff like that, and it's not generally appealing. But also the men, they don't, I'm not going to say every man, but they don't physically take care of themselves either. It's not like they would, go to the gym or, let's watch what we eat. Let's watch what we eat. Let's, stay in good form for our women or our wives, because it's considered vanity to want to take care of the body that God gave you. But it's the only one body God gave you. And if there's certain things that are to keep it working at its optimum health, then why not partake in those things?
Yeah, you bring up a very interesting point. It's a point worth making, that so much of the burden for beauty is placed upon women, while men slack. You see the overgrown hair, the lack of grooming, the physically letting go, the larger bellies, the beer bellies, all of that kind of stuff. And we insist, however, on women looking just so. I think it's incumbent on both sexes to stay in physically good form for each other, so that you can feel good about the person. You can know that this is a person who not only is taking care of themselves, but as far as health goes, they'll be around for a lot longer for us to enjoy each other. There's no point getting big belly fat, and we now know that belly fat is pretty much the defining factor in looking at how healthy we are as far as cholesterol and heart disease. When you have a lot of belly fat, that's a telltale sign that your health is worse than if you had fat somewhere else. And so you get diabetes and the kinds of things that take health into the realm of being life-threatening. So it behooves us all to look after ourselves in such a way that we can have health and long life, but also a partner who is proud to be seen with us rather than not, and we can enjoy each other's company.
And part of that you mentioned too is staying in current fashions and things of that nature, which could be seen as vain. A lot of people see it vain, but you're saying it's important. And I think also too, even though a lot of people may force themselves into that role of saying it doesn't matter, if their partner did do it, they would appreciate it. They would get excited from it.
How about lastly, just touching on the fact that sex is spiritual?
Yes, it's not something we usually do in terms of thinking of sex as spiritual. Usually when we say the word sex, we think carnal. And it's almost shocking to hear someone mention sex in relation to spirituality, but it is in fact an integral part of our spirituality. And that is why I make the point in the book that oftentimes when you find churches where people are, they're mean-spirited, they're miserable, they're restless, and these kinds of things, part of that can be traced back to the fact that they're not either getting any sex, they're not getting the kind of sex that they want, or they're not getting enough sex. And to the extent that your sexual being is not being satisfied, it will affect how you relate to other people. A lot of husbands and wives can attest to the fact that when they want it and are not getting it the way they want it or however often they want it, they often fuss and fight with each other. And when they finally do get it, it's like a calming effect comes over the relationship where now we've hit the reset button. We're back in sync with one another because we have shared on that intimate level the way we're supposed to. And that's part of the function of sex. So it is definitely spiritual, and it impacts our spirituality in ways that are measurable.
And do you think that a lot of them aren't getting to that level of spirituality or calmness or engaging in sex often because they feel like most conservative Christians, it's like they restrict themselves from showing emotion.
Yeah.
Even if it's in song, like you were saying in there, like you were saying, like some of the more modern Christian music, like a lot of the Christians are like, don't listen to that, it's terrible, it's devil's music, it's too loud, it's too, there's too much of a beat to it, let's stick to this hymn, let's hum it, no drums, let's just, cling to the songbook. And I mean, they're like that in every other aspect of their lives as well. Yeah. So they don't ever reach those peaks or that excitement or get to enjoy that level of spirituality because they think it's something other, but it's not. It all ties into like your holistic well-being as a spiritual person.
And isn't it amazing that God has created us to be able to hit peaks and valleys of emotions? And it's part of what I talk about in the book about sexuality teaching us things about life. Because the fact that we can hit orgasm and then come into a period of afterglow is instructive about the way God has designed our emotions. We're not meant to live up here all the time in terms of emotion. Neither are we to live down here all the time in terms of emotion. We go through peaks and valleys, and that's what keeps life interesting. One of the things that I think is also instructive in comparing that is whenever we find ourselves, like whenever we look at how we are made as human beings, no one of us can fully do anything perfectly. So take, for example, we're watching TV and we're watching something that we even find interesting on TV. The way our bodies are is that we have different levels of conscious engagement with the program. We're not always fully paying attention, taking in every single thing. There are times when your mind will think of something else, you're drifting off onto something, and then you come back. But you're still watching the program. And if you ever sat down in front of a television or any other thing, for example, and tried to say, okay, I'm going to intensely focus on this for the duration of the period that program lasts, you wouldn't be able to accomplish it because your mind isn't designed to stay there. So we're not supposed to be up here, down here, or we're supposed to be kind of undulating this way and that. We go through different experiences. We experience things at different levels. Sometimes we hit peaks, sometimes we hit valleys, sometimes we're and that's the way life is. So our sexuality is to reflect that. We're supposed to be engaged in sex in such a way that you hit those peaks and valleys.
They say not great sex all the time, but sometimes the quickie, sometimes you're crying. Things of that level. Yeah. Okay. There's something I really want to talk about before you go, and it's there was a section that you had on the older men older women, younger men. You go on there you're talking about one of the things that plague the older woman is the fact the woman when they marry these older men, erectile dysfunction, and there's a large case of that in men above 40. You suggest that older women should perhaps consider the option of the younger men, especially with the peaks that they reach. Will be more close together than a woman, right? Now, erectile dysfunction is a major problem with these women. You just mentioned that the lack of sex makes you grumpy. It's necessary for life, for our even our spiritual growth.
It is.
Now, you go on to mention, thank God for Viagra, Cialis, and sex toys. Well, you say some people may say sex toys. But I want to bring this up, and it's these things they're man-made. What were your feelings be about something like marijuana? I mean, throughout the fact that it's illegal, but this is a God.
As
do
far
you
as
think that
being
God
an enhancement to
Yeah, do you
sexuality?
think God naturally placed things in nature, seeing that we're sexual beings and we're to enjoy sex, and natural enhancements for us to enjoy?
I think marijuana would be a double-edged sword. I probably wouldn't espouse the use of marijuana as a sexual enhancement, because you have to take it in such a way that it can harm your lungs. It's hallucinogenic. We don't really know what the full effects of it are. But I am aware of the fact, and I do know people who can personally attest to that its use in terms of heightening sexual awareness, sexual stimulus, and that sort of thing. It tends to heighten that and make it, even more out of this world. I haven't personally experienced that because I'm not big on smoking and marijuana and those kinds of things. So I certainly do know that it can and has been used for that purpose, but it's not something that I would recommend doing. I mean, I experience sexuality in such a way that I can't even imagine what it would be like to be better than the way I experience it, because it's that exciting, it's that much fun. So I don't think that it's necessary to do it, but if someone wanted to do it,
I also wanted to add to that, because you had mentioned the sex toys. And when I first started reading it, actually, in the first part of your book, you had mentioned that, we are made in God's likeness, right? And that we are considered the idols. Yeah. And we're not supposed to make any graven images. So couldn't those type of toys be considered making an image? Because it says not an image of anything on earth or in heaven. And when you're making a toy, you're making an idol of the male's phallus or the woman's, genitalia, and you're worshiping it because it's just the part. And like we were saying before, like sex is a whole body experience. It's the person. It's a love exchange. It's a spirit exchange. And you focusing on this toy is in a way a form of idol worship.
Nicole, you should probably look into studying theology. No, I'm serious. I'm very serious. I mean, I've listened to some of the points you both made here today, and you have very thoughtful minds theologically. That's an excellent point you just made as far as comparing a model of the human phallus or the female vagina as from the way I've described things in chapter 1, being made in God's image. That could be considered idolatry. Yes. Yes. You make a very interesting point, and I think it's a valid point.
Because you went on further to explain that, we're not supposed to, the depersonalization of sex, and, it's like a sport, and we're just looking at it as a game in the body part section. Like we look at a woman, she's not a sum of her parts. She just simply is parts. There isn't a care for what happens to her emotionally after she has sex with this individual or whatever. It's just kind of, the bam and go. Yeah. And it's like, it's the same type of thing because you're using this as a replacement for that body part. When as a human being, you say that a man is not supposed to be alone. That's the one thing God says. Like, it's supposed to be a union, a partnership. It's supposed to be like a love exchange. And to depersonalize it on that level is almost like an insult, to God.